Thanks for visiting my channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. In this video, we catch up with a lorry driver who challenged Jacob Rees Mogg on customs and the single market before Brexit happened. Hope you enjoy this video.
Well, all the people who believed Boris Johnson and the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities, Jacob Rees Mogg, when they said that food would be cheaper and trade would be easier and fuel would be cheaper, all of those nonsenses. One of the reasons I understood pretty quickly how wrong they were was because of the guidance I received from people who called the programme. So the Irish question really fell into place for me when a fellow explained that he had built an extension on his house after the Good Friday Agreement had been signed, and that meant that his bathroom was in Northern Ireland while the rest of his house was in the Republic. And the idea that you could have different rules governing what food he could buy and sell and what duty would be charged on alcohol in his bathroom compared to his kitchen was palpably absurd. But still, this simple understanding eluded the likes of Rees Mogg and Dorries. And on the more complicated issues of international trade, a caller called Kieran became something of a star of the show, earning the sobriquet Kieran the van driver, which was actually, in retrospect, unhelpful. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a van driver, but Kieran the international courier, or indeed international man of mystery, might have been more appropriate because he had such such a complete understanding of the requirements of cross-border trade, both within and without the European Union, and the nuances of single market and customs union membership as opposed to European Union membership. So the citing of Switzerland as a model we could somehow follow, or whatever it may be. He really schooled us. And of course, he didn't just school me, he also schooled the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities.
As a business owner of a small European express courier company, will the express transport industry survive outside the customs union and single market when we become a third country?
It would be very surprising if it didn't, that there are express deliveries between Switzerland and the European Union, and Switzerland remains a third country. That I think there are a lot of scare stories around how business will operate, but you can get express deliveries from the UK to the United States, that it is perfectly possible to implement and work through customs procedures in a highly efficient and streamlined way. But there will be some changes, because we will not be in the customs union and we will not be in the single market. Response from you, Kieran?
Right. If I can give you some hands-on experience of where I've been, I've been to every border and country in Europe. I've done a job to Switzerland before. I've exported £100,000 worth of exhibition equipment for a medical company from Cambridge. I got sent down what was called a Route 1 at Customs House in Dover. I was there for 7 hours. I then got to the Swiss border. I was there for 5 hours, and I missed the first day of the exhibition. They had to pay a 20% down payment on their temporary imports for their machines that they wanted to exhibit. They missed the first day. It cost them about £10,000, and they were deeply, deeply unhappy. This is not a frictionless border. The Swiss border is not frictionless. You have to stop. You have to go out of your van or your vehicle in your truck. You have to go up four flights of stairs to find your customs agent. You have to get your T1 or T2 forms processed, or your carnet, depending on what you're doing. Then you have to get them stamped by the French, the Swiss, then you can come in. The same applies to Customs House in Dover. There's no infrastructure there. There's no parking. At the moment, you can go there at the right time. You might be in and out in 30, 40 minutes. But when everybody has to clear their customs papers, it will be an absolute nightmare. I just want to know how you can respond to that.
Jacob Rees Mogg. Well, it's a question of having the right infrastructure in place and the systems that deal with this. That if you look at the imports and exports via Southampton to the rest of the world, these are hugely efficient and streamlined because that's what they're focused on. The issue with Dover is it's not primarily focused on non-EU movements at the moment. Once we're outside the EU, Dover will have to become a streamlined port. Otherwise, they'll find that they lose business to other ports.
Won't we suffer the problems we have that gentleman suffered in Switzerland? Why would Switzerland have been at it for years, and they clearly haven't done very well with it? At least what I take from what Kieran's telling us.
Kieran is telling us about an incident where he had a particularly difficult time getting through Switzerland. I appreciate that. I wasn't trying to minimise it. But the Swiss-EU border is most of the time a very efficient border with very limited delays, as is the Norway-Sweden border. Norway
The
being...
border is much smaller than the UK border. You can go by Gothenburg into Norway and clear customs there at a physical hard border checkpoint. You can go from Hirtshals to Larvik and clear at the port in Larvik. It's tiny.
There are checks indeed between Norway and Sweden, because Norway is in the single market but not in the customs union. But the border is an efficient border that you can have, and there are many efficient borders globally, and that is what we should be trying to do. That's what government policy is, to have as seamless as possible. But there will be some changes, of course.
I'll let you make your final point, Kieran, because there are. So this will be your final observation. But make a final point to Jacob Rees Mogg. Kieran?
There's not one single white paper that the government has yet produced on road transport apart from permits for trailers, including caravans and private trailers over 750 kilos. Everybody would be affected. Driving licences would be affected. And they're also saying, according to the European Union white paper, it says you'll need a transport manager that must be a resident in an EU country and you must have a premises. This is going to put small to medium-sized businesses out of business overnight. We won't be able to compete, and all you're going to have is the large companies running it. I'll tell you something. One last thing from me. I transport exhibitions. I transport car parts for the just-in-time production line. I transport AOG airport on-ground parts. I do band work for concerts. They cannot go by truck. They must go by van. They rely on the smooth and frictionless transport over borders from Dover to Calais, where you do not stop to clear customs. There's nowhere to stop, and it'd be an absolute disaster when it does. All
right, I have to finish there. Final rejoinder from you.
Well, there will be a white paper. There is a bill on transport going through the House of Commons at the moment, and the issue with driving licence is one at the forefront of the Department of Transport's mind already, and they have a solution in sight. So I think the fears are being overstated.
Okay. It was about 4 years ago, May 2018. Kieran is on the line now at Heathrow, so that means my first question has to be, you haven't become Kieran the pilot, have you?
No, I'm loading a job going to Paris. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate, and I hope you are as well. You know I do. So there it is. Yep. These fears are being overstated. Were they?
I think what's happening in the UK is much worse than we could have envisaged, obviously, because when I mentioned back 4 years ago, Switzerland is obviously landlocked. We're at the mercy of ferry ports and timed crossings on the train and on the boats. So I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, it took me 11 hours to cross over, literally from Dover docks from the entrance to get to Calais. It took me 11 hours. And coming back, it took me 16 hours because I had to wait for my UK import numbers to put on my GVMS documents that allow me to cross. What's happening at the ports is the civilian staff, essentially, that issue your boarding passes are acting as the customs agents that Michael Gove promised would come along. So I've timed a lot of those crossings when I've been stuck in the queues. It's anywhere between, I think the best is about 5 minutes, the worst is 20 minutes. But the average is about 10 to 15 minutes per vehicle to get your boarding pass.
I had never thought of that, actually. The fact that, I mean, a road as opposed to a port is going to be a completely different proposition. When you listened back to that, were you on the line? Were you there for it? Did you?
Yeah, no. I did listen to it. 'Cause it was a long time ago.
It was 4 years. You know, I mean, it almost beggars belief that anyone could have come away from that, unless we're talking about the usual subjects on this programme of deference and class and the ludicrous reverence that some people are groomed to feel towards people with plums in their mouth. It's astonishing that he thought did you come away thinking he knew more about your life than you did?
No. As soon as he started mentioning that you can go from the United States to the UK to deliver goods in economic and quick fashion, it's comical, because a boat takes 2 to 4 weeks to come over in containers, and it's no way how your manufacturing lines work in this country. A lot of the car parts now, James, are flown in. They're not driven in anymore. They're flown in. One of my friends is actually busy collecting all this stuff out of Heathrow Airport to get it up to Mini and up to Jaguar Land Rover, because they're flying it because they can't risk having it on the back of a truck. So that's a logistical challenge. It's unsustainable. It's expensive.
I was going to say there's costs and there's financial costs and environmental costs to that.
Well, of course. I mean, if you put something on the back of a van, the car manufacturer is using your van as a temporary warehouse storage facility while you're delivering it, because it comes off and it comes straight on. I think COVID has masked so much of the problems that we are now going to face, which is why
the Common Select Committee came out and said pre-pandemic levels of touristic traffic are going to start to come back. Now, there's a new port, obviously it's been built in Calais, and the tourist traffic goes through more or less the same lanes as the freight traffic. And they're dreading it. And I've spoken to the people there when they check my passport, and they are dreading what's going to come. And it's going to be exactly the same down in Dover, especially when you've got your biometric checks and you're going to have to physically get out of your car or out of your van. There's no facilities, there's no infrastructure, there's nothing there. So what we saw in January, on the quietest month of the year, was absolute mayhem. And every time I went out, it took 8 to 12 hours just to cross over.
What would it have taken previously? Just remind us.
Before Brexit happened, and you only needed a CMR, you could literally turn up for the ferry 30 minutes before it was due to sail. You go straight through, jump on, and you're across in 90 minutes, 120 minutes, so maximum 2 hours.
Good Lord.
So, these waiting times, because I'm charging by the job.
Yes, of course.
I cannot charge my customers for waiting time for sitting for 16 hours in one direction and 11 going out. It just makes it unsustainable, and I'll just lose the work. So I did that unpaid. I didn't get paid for it. I charged the same price for the job. Some people might say I'm an idiot. You can say you're an idiot, but then when you start adding 3/4 of the cost of a job that you've quoted for in waiting time, it's just unsustainable.
Well, is it unsustainable? Because I guess the sort of Gamony contingent will be saying, well, you said you'd go out of business overnight and you're still here. And, I'm not defending it. I'm just acknowledging the existence of the boneheads. That somehow will undermine your original arguments, because you are still...
A lot of my work's gone.
Right.
Be honest with you, James, a lot of it's gone. I'll give you an example. I had to drive all the way empty to Paris in the first week of January, unpaid, to collect a job in Paris to go to Berlin to deliver goods for a customer that moved to Berlin because of Brexit. So I had to go to Europe to go to work. And I've invoiced it in euros. I've lost on the currency, on the exchange rate and the transaction costs. It's something that you're going to have to sit down and think, I can't do that again. So it's another one gone. And I'm not working as much now, James.
Right.
I've got friends that aren't working. I've got friends that haven't worked for 6-7 weeks. There's just no work there. The concert work, for instance, that I mentioned, especially the merchandise part of it. One of my, somebody I know that used to do the transport for the merchandise, it's gone. We're yet to see the full effects of what's going to happen because of COVID.
Clearly.
Because there were no concerts, there were no exhibitions. So once all that comes back, I think you'll start to see what's really, really going to happen.
This will sound like a facetious question, but it isn't. Well, it's 48% facetious, 52% sincere. Is there anything the new Minister of State for Brexit Opportunities could do in the short term to make your life easier immediately?
Resign?
Seriously, though.
James,
Kieran,
all the clips that you've played, including mine, he's ignorant. I hate to say it, he is ignorant, and he has absolutely no understanding of what happens in the real world, how companies operate. I feel sorry for the people that rang you in the first hour, that are the actual businesses. I'm only responsible for transporting the stuff. I don't get involved in customs. And the guy that's doing the commodity codes, I could only imagine he'll be pulling his hair out doing commodity codes day in and day out in a job that was so unnecessary for no benefits whatsoever.
There's no... I mean, we're out of time, but it's good to hear your voice, actually, Kieran.
And you.
Yeah, you're sounding well, which is good to know. You must have days like I have, where you just think, how is this spell still not broken? How could this denial of reality still... They're boasting about getting it done, mate. That's literally all they've got. They list Boris Johnson's catalogue of catastrophe and calumny and scandal and sleaze, and then in response they say, oh yes, but he got Brexit done. And it's like saying, well, oh yes, but he cooked a dog's dinner.
James, when you go back to Northern Ireland, you need an external border on every frontier that has different regulatory agreements, as we've found out. So the border had to go down the Irish Sea, and there's no way around it. And you go back to Frost, who negotiated that deal and then pedalled back on it and then ran off and says he hated it. It defies belief.
It really does.
Yeah, I think it's really sad, the state of politics in our country, and also the understanding of how a country actually operates.
Well, and they're doubling down on that now. Well, one warning from a Conservative MP that the model that has been deployed this week in the defences of Boris Johnson could be a very grim sign of what may be undertaken by the Conservative Party in the future. They need to rely upon that absence of understanding that you described. Kieran, thank you, as ever, for steering us through what would otherwise be quite complicated territories with explanations simple enough, I think, from Kieran. I'm sure everyone listening would agree that even Jacob Rees Mogg can understand that now. Maybe not Nadine Dorries, but even Jacob Rees Mogg.